This week, I'm joined by Matt Alderman and John Strand to discuss all kinds of enterprise security news, including Threat Connect now supporting the MITRE ATT&CK framework, Aqua Security deepening its strategic relationship with Microsoft for Azure, DefenseStorm raised $50 million. Haven't heard of them before. Kind of interesting. Signal Sciences integrates with Datadog to provide real-time security threat insights. In our second segment, David Harding, Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of Imageware Systems, is joining us to talk about how identity authentication is more important now than ever before. In our final segment, Jared Haggerty, the Director of Content and Curation for Databerry, to talk about where the security of business... Sorry, the teleprompter was cut off. Where the security of business is and where it's headed going forward. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Prevention-based tools leave you blind to threats inside your network. By adding network traffic analysis to your SOC, you can find and stop attackers before they make their move. ExtraHop provides complete visibility at enterprise scale. Detect threats 95% faster with machine learning that helps Tier 1 analysts perform like seasoned threat hunters. Visit extrahop.com/Security Weekly to learn why the SAND Institute calls ExtraHop fast and amazingly thorough. That's extrahop.com/Security Weekly. Networks are becoming increasingly complex and fragmented, and digital transformation and DevOps are driving an explosion in network connectivity changes. With each new network connection, cyber attackers may gain another opening to breach or traverse the network. At Tufin, they've pioneered a policy-based approach to network security management using automation and analytics. As a result, you can make network changes in minutes instead of days, reliably and securely. To learn more about Tufin, the security policy company, go to securityweekly.com/Tufin and sign up for a free evaluation. By the end of 2020, 99% of exploited vulnerabilities will be publicly disclosed and known to IT system admins. The consequences of that fact means the burglar will already be in your house because you left the front door wide open. By failing to patch known vulnerabilities, how can you keep the threat actors out? Through cloud-based automation, Automox enables you to slam the door on unpatched OS and third-party vulnerabilities across your entire Windows, Mac, and Linux infrastructure. Take advantage of a free trial with Automox to not only see the vulnerability status of your infrastructure, but do something about it within minutes. Start automating the fundamentals of cyber hygiene at securityweekly.com/Automox. That's securityweekly.com/Automox. Welcome to episode 145 of Enterprise Security Weekly for July 17th, 2019. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian, joined remotely by Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
You looked frozen there for a second. Just like my teleprompter, I feel like it just told me to pause there for a minute. Mr. John...
Skype.
Skype.
It's Skype.
John Strand is here with us. John, welcome.
Hey, guys. Good to actually be on the show with all three of us. That's cool.
Yes. I am excited. So excited. I almost forgot to tell you about our upcoming webcast with ISC Squared and our very own webcast from Security Weekly, evaluating security vendors without losing your mind, which is tomorrow. Go to securityweekly.com/webcasts and securityweekly.com/on-demand to check out the archive. Also, Security Weekly is returning to Las Vegas for Black Hat and DEF CON. If you'd like to request a briefing or sponsor, are we sold out? Please tell me we're almost sold out. Are we almost sold out? Almost sold out. So make sure you go to securityweekly.com/booking to book your interview and or a sponsored appearance on Paul's Security Weekly that's being recorded live at Black Hat. Alrighty, on to the enterprise security news for this week. Where'd you guys want to start? I put some in there. I wasn't intending on covering every single one. I wanted to kind of just gravitate towards ones that seemed most interesting.
John?
Wait, hold on. My audio just cut out for a second. What was that?
He said, where do you want to start?
All right, let's jump right into the auto-remediation stuff for Office 365, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I
Can I
haven't
jump
heard of,
in and just
yeah, I
go
haven't
ahead?
heard of Vade Security before.
Me neither. I'm also very, very interested in what they're actually doing. I don't quite understand what Auto-Remediate does, but whatever. So I think it's interesting because, Matt and I were talking about, moving forward cloud security and how things are actually changing dramatically in a very, very, very rapid clip, and how many organizations are still very heavily focused on older technologies and older concepts, which they haven't mastered. And when you're looking at Office 365, there's a bunch of security things that you can bring to bear that are not on by default. Office 365, you can turn on user behavioral analytics, impossible login, detecting password spraying. You can even do full spear phishing campaigns and test your ability to actually detect these types of attacks. So there's a lot of security built into Office 365, but what I want to know is what is that auto-remediate? And I wonder if it's set up for, they talk about MSPs, if they have the ability to actually find the attacks and then automatically lock those inboxes in and then clean them out. Is it basically kind of a unified dashboard that allows you to go in and shut down different systems or search for emails across all the global address lists that are provided? It is interesting. I think it's really, really cool. And I think it also shows how there's a gap in what Microsoft is actually doing in the area of remediation of email compromises, and they're fitting into that market space, which once again is interesting. But I think what it does for anybody that's listening to the show is if you're implementing cloud-based email, you need to look at the security features and say, does it provide more or less than what you had with your traditional email setup? And if it's less, what do you need to put in place to actually get you up to par on security for your email in the cloud?
John, looking at the article a little more in depth, it looks like they released a manual remediation feature that allowed one or more threats to be removed from the inbox with a single click. So what I think the auto-remediate feature is now the ability to automate that click instead of make it manual. There was an interesting, but it's interesting. It says 600 million protected mailboxes. For a lot of us, that's a lot of mailboxes, and no one's heard of Vade Secure. So I don't know if this has just been because it's MSP focused and nobody in the enterprise is buying it because it's embedded as part of a managed service offering. But 600 million protected mailboxes seems like a lot for a company we've never heard of.
Yeah, exactly.
That means one of the major email providers is probably using them in some capacity for something, and therefore they can make that claim, would be my guess.
Like in the background somewhere.
like Yahoo or Gmail or one of those, right? What I think is interesting is as we talk about the differences in variations between what the cloud providers offer in terms of security, what an MSSP can offer smaller businesses in terms of security, and then what the enterprise needs. I think much of what we cover in enterprise security are larger security or larger enterprises adopting technology that's really geared for them that will ride on top of what either an MSSP or the cloud provider themselves can give you in terms of a solution. But I think the masses, a larger number of organizations, are going to either use what's in the cloud provider itself. Of course, there's a lot of time and effort that might be involved in setting that up. So you might go to an MSSP that can provide those services for you. Larger enterprises are going to go, no, we're doing it in-house. We're doing it ourselves. We really need tools to give us advanced functionality because we've got, 20, 30, or 100,000 of those 600 million mailboxes to manage ourselves, right?
Yep.
Right.
That's kind of how I see the market today.
Yeah, and I think for the vendors out there, they have to realize that there are direct clients that are going to buy and run it themselves, and there are clients that are never going to buy from you directly because they're going to use a managed service. This was one of the big fights we had at Tenable, was they couldn't understand why the MSSPs were friends, not foes, right? It's just that's the way the market's going to be. You're either buying it to manage it yourself, or you're buying it through a service because you don't have the resources to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wanted to see if I could actually share my screen. I don't know if I can in this version of Skype. One of the things that I don't think I can here. One of the things, if you guys get a chance to look at it, I started up a question yesterday on Twitter. You remember the Verizon data breach report from 2013 where they said how organizations detected they were compromised, and it listed out by small organizations and large organizations?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Someone else told me is one of the popular answers, right?
Exactly. Somebody else told me. So here's the deal. The big thing that I want to call out from it, I can bring the percentages and just tell you what they are. Whenever we're talking about external, when we're talking about MSSPs and things like that, small organizations having a monitoring service detect the attack is 0.5% of organizations, small organizations realizing they're compromised from a monitoring service. 31% is external fraud detection, 19% is external customers. So somebody outside of the organization is responsible for right around 50% or a little bit over of all the detects. In large organizations, this is what absolutely just floored me. For partnering with a monitoring service, an MSP, 42.9% of the incidences were detected by an external MSP. So you're looking at small organizations as 0.5. When you're looking at larger organizations, you're looking at 42%.
But is that just because large organizations have more alerts that are easily detectable because they have more activity?
I think that there's more activity, there's more alerts, but remember, this is an external MSP. So what I'm trying to get at on this is whenever we're talking about security, especially when we're talking about cloud security, it looks like a lot of organizations, especially in the larger space, are definitely moving very heavily to that external MSP, much like this article we're talking about, and utilizing their capabilities to actually detect the attacks. And it just looks like it's not been adopted at all by small organizations whatsoever. So just wanted to throw that out there too.
Cool.
The cloud stuff, the segue is the Aqua Security story, right? Which deepens the relationship with Azure, which makes complete sense for two reasons. Number one, Microsoft Ventures was part of the Series A for Aqua. So anything Aqua does with Microsoft is strategic in general. Anyways, but this is, again, to that point. There's certain things that Microsoft's going to offer. There's certain things they're not. And from a container security perspective, that's something that the cloud providers are not currently offering themselves. And therefore, a third party like an Aqua Security, and there's others out there, make complete sense to protect the container side.
Absolutely. Now, I've got a question kind of on this one. What does a complete protection platform look like in the cloud? And this may be a webcast or something that we end up needing to go through, because there's a ton of different vendors that are actually providing different parts of the puzzle for cloud security, whether it's email protection, whether it's API protection, whether it's like Kubernetes container protection. So if we were going to say, okay, what's the sweet spot for an organization that's in the cloud? How many different products or product lines would they need to have leveraged to actually fully protect their cloud offerings? And that's been something that's been kind of itching the back of my head for the past couple of months, because we have all these vendors that are doing a thing in protecting their customers, but there's nobody that's really like, this is the total package. We do absolutely everything from end to end.
Well, I think this is the life cycle we see in security, right? Like if you remember back in the day when you had an IDS, you had a lot of choices for IDS, and then you also had to go to a different vendor to do anything with logs and even like more traditional things, right? I think as time went on, a lot of those things consolidated. And I think what we're seeing now with cloud is where you've got a lot of options for clouds, different cloud services, and we've got a lot of options for vendors. I think eventually all of that is going to consolidate down to a certain point as well until the next, new technology where we're, moving our businesses to comes along, and then the cycle just repeats itself.
But it's a great point, John, because there's a lot of things that we think about in a traditional holistic security program that may not be applicable in the cloud, and therefore it would be really good to come back and say, look, I can get these from my cloud service provider, so I don't need an external, but here's what the cloud security vendors aren't going to provide or don't currently provide, and these are the additional things I need to add. That would be a really interesting exercise I haven't done yet. It's one we should probably do.
And I do think that is a webcast. Like if we were going to sit down and say, okay, like just the three of us, what are all the different cloud security things that we think people need to have in place? And then are there any vendors that actually fit all of those different places? That's going to be really, really interesting to me, because I think it's going to uncover a much larger problem in the cloud security space, that it's almost impossible to get complete coverage other than throwing just a ridiculous amount of money at it.
Well, and I think a lot of it's piecemeal because everyone's using different bits and pieces of cloud services, which means right now you need different bits and pieces of a lot of different security vendors. Some of those come from the cloud provider itself. Some come from third parties. Some you got to build a lot of it yourself, right? It's because it's the technology so new. So a lot of it depends on what you're doing. I don't know how we'd split that up. Like, do you do like DevOps in one, and infrastructure and SaaS as three different categories. And
No
we need
idea.
a fourth to have, quadrants, because everybody loves quadrants.
I'll figure it out. We'll match.
That's a Matt thing.
We'll mash it out. Yeah,
let
that is definitely
we're
a
gonna
Matt
put
thing.
this problem on Matt's plate. So
Well, because Matt
Great.
has solved similar problems to this with spreadsheets and diagrams. That's Matt's thing.
And it's
it
also
is.
something that I need for my customers.
Yes.
Kind of coming back to
Agreed.
it is, one of the things I constantly bitch about is a lot of the vendors and what they're doing are not covering the actual attacks that we're using. So I can continue to bitch about it and continue making money off of it. But I think that having someone like Matt going through and saying, okay, this is a comprehensive end-to-end solution. These are the products and the things that you should be looking at from a CASB, container security.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that'll really help people get that kind of like visualized in their head as far as a roadmap.
All right, task taken. I'll start working on it.
Sorry, dude.
It is Microsoft week, by the way, because Trend Micro also makes an announcement this week about additional capabilities in Microsoft Azure. Look, everybody's going to do this. Here's the thing that was interesting in this article for me, and it's more about metering and a consumption-based model. I've been telling the enterprise vendors for a while that this eventually will come. SaaS vendors or annual subscription vendors like predictability of revenue. They like to sell you an annual contract and recognize that revenue for the next year. We're going to move to a world where you're going to pay month to month based on consumption. And this is a really interesting article here because it talks about how Trend is going to support a consumption-based model for Azure because that makes sense in the cloud. And I expect to see more announcements like this coming and changing the way pricing is done in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting how some of the larger security companies especially are offering their own services packaged with that rather than giving that business. I guess when you reach a certain size, right, why give that business to an MSSP if you could bring it in-house and make a profit on it?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the big fears whenever you're talking to a lot of vendors, especially whenever you're talking about Chronicle backstory and the behemoth that thing is going to become. A lot of vendors are like, yeah, I can partner with Google and we can start doing this and we can start hooking into the ecosystem. But what necessarily is going to stop them from basically saying, screw it, we're just going to do what you're doing and we're basically taking over your entire business model. It's been one of the concerns I've had with like Red Canary and Carbon Black for years. Red Canary sits on top of Carbon Black, among other things, and does an amazing job at what they do. But looking at Carbon Black, their new threat hunting platform, is that kind of a direct shot at Red Canary? It's very weird, whether or not you're riding on top of a vendor, whether or not that vendor can take over your business model. And that's just a concern that I have for a lot of vendors that I like quite a bit.
Well, I saw the same thing with StackRox and Sysdig, right? They were using the Sysdig open source kernel to build their platform on top of. Sysdig comes out with a security solution that basically competes with it. So that's the challenge, both with open source and other commercial products. Look, any of these companies, like a Carbon Black that's public now, they're going to continue to find ways to grow revenue stream. And sometimes that means stepping on one of their partners that have built services because they got to keep growing to hit numbers on a quarterly basis.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Have you guys heard of DefenseStorm before?
No, I have
One
not.
of the we covered a lot. Actually, yesterday, I forget, Monday on Business Security Weekly, we covered a bunch of funding rounds and such. And this one is one of the ones we did not cover. I've not heard of them before. Sounds like they're consolidating multiple sources of data to give you some visibility on security items.
Very niche-y, and I think that's why we haven't heard of them. It's regional community banks and credit unions. That's a very narrow niche.
Now that you say that, now I feel like I've heard of DefenseStorm before in that space. Now that you say that, Matt.
Maybe your credit union uses them or something.
Yeah, they got $15 million in funding, which I thought was really cool. And now I have a newfound respect, right? Because if you are able to choose your customers like that and do well enough to be able to get funding and grow the company, yeah, you're doing it right? I mean, we all know that the biggest mistake that companies make, that entrepreneurs make, that security companies make is our product is for everyone, right? And that's not going to work. There's a niche, there's a profile, and I think that profile isn't often industry or specific to a vertical, even specific to a person. I think that what you need to focus on is the problem and who has that problem, and that may not be specific to an individual in a particular role or a company in a particular vertical, or it might be. But the companies that do best figure that out. So.
Yeah, and I think here it's a niche, it's a focus. They probably do it extremely well. And look, part of the problem sometimes with startups is their focus is too broad and they can't succeed. This is very narrow.
Well, but you're constantly being told as a startup, like, oh, you need to focus on small and medium-sized businesses. Oh, you need to focus on enterprises. Oh, you need to have this. Oh, you need to have that. And it's very, very difficult to sometimes step back and stop listening to experts and all the different things that you need to do, and really try to look at your customer base, look at the people that are interested in your product, and making sure that the product is tuned to them. And speaking from experience on that, I think Paul can speak to this too. There's always someone that has an opinion on what your startup and what your product should do. So if you're able to focus on your niche, find that niche, and then allow it to grow, I think that's a much better approach than trying to be a shotgun blast.
Yeah, and I agree, John. You don't always get good advice, right?
Yeah.
In terms of who you should be targeting. So, and it's not an easy thing to determine often. So,
cool. With that, gentlemen, I need to fade off. I will talk to you guys all later.
Alrighty. Thanks, John.
Have a good one, John.
Bye.
I wanted to talk this Cloudflare registers trademark Sun Microsystems slogan, "The network is the computer."
Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
because I thought it was cool.
Yeah, but if the network is the computer, then the cloud is the network.
Yes, very true. Very
and
true.
And this is Cloudflare. So why are they going for something that's a little old here in trademarking it? I would have...
I'm told that the phrase was first coined in 1984 by John Cage, who was the 21st employee of Sun Microsystems, credited with building the vision around the network is the computer. Sun was acquired in 2010 by Oracle, right? I get that right. Acquired by Oracle.
Got that right.
And Oracle did not renew the trademark. And for those that don't know, U.S. trademarks expire. And when they expire, it's up for grabs. Well, you have to go through the process of applying for it and proving that you're going to use it. Well, there's a couple different options, right? You can apply for it and say, yes, I'm going to use it, and they'll keep tabs on you and make sure that you do use it in commerce. Or you can, start using it and then trademark it. So apparently no one else wanted the network as the computer, or maybe they did, and maybe there was a battle that was fought that we didn't hear about. But in any case, Cloudflare now has the trademark on the network is the computer, which in previous times, Matt brings up a very good point today, but in previous times, in 1984, that was pretty visionary. No, I mean, if we go in our time machine back to 1984, that dude John had some great vision.
So let's take that forward, right? So I said the cloud is the network. Does that mean the cloud is the computer through transitive properties?
Or the computer is the cloud? You're right. I think it gets kind of lost in the shuffle today with the way that technology and security is really implemented. So
yeah, I love this Signal Sciences Datadog integration discussion. One of the things we talked about at Layered Insight, and we knew there was an opportunity that the ability to do application performance monitoring and application security monitoring could come together. Yeah. Datadog's really good at kind of the application performance monitoring side of the equation. Signal Science is really good on the application security side. I like this. I think we're going to see more evolution of the APM and some of the security application security markets start to merge together. I think this is a really great announcement because, look, when an application goes haywire, it could be a security issue, it could be a performance issue. At the end of the day, it's an application outage that needs to be addressed, which could impact your business. So I like the combination of the two. So I think this was a pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it really, having done a lot of development recently and still, but you as a developer have to really care about the health of your application. Health of your application inside of that is things like performance, resiliency, which is essentially, security is part of the resiliency. Performance, I think, is also part of that resiliency. How many users can I handle before, the system crumbles, which is more of a capacity so much as performance, right? Performance being a single user has a really great experience and it's really fast versus 10,000 users hit the system at the same time. As a developer, you have to care about all of those things. And if there is one place that I can go through some integrations for me to see that's a win all around. And I think Signal Sciences is one of the best security players that really gets that and got that from the start of their company and has continued it forward, that, hey, if we're going to be successful in security, especially with developers, we have to take all these things into account and integrate not just with security companies, but development style tools, performance monitoring style tools, and bring that together. And they've always had that mantra. And I really get it now, right? Because as a developer, security is just one thing you have to worry about, because like Matt, you said, your app can go down for a whole bunch of different reasons, right?
Yep. And that leads into the Zero North platform enhancement. So I, again, haven't heard of Zero North, but to your point, they're here to try to integrate a lot of the scanner data into the CI/CD pipeline, because as we've been talking about on this show, on Application Security Weekly, it's that integration of the security tools with the existing DevOps process, bringing that data into the developer tools to make it easier to address. So it looks like Zero North really focused on that. I don't know the breadth of capabilities. It talks a lot about the different scanners and the integration into the CI/CD pipeline, but I haven't actually seen it, so I'm not quite sure how it works. It could just be a very interesting aggregator of different application security tools and then integrating that right into the developer tools, which would be kind of cool. But I don't know how much additional value they provide above and beyond that.
Yeah, and as a developer, I really don't care about tests that passed so much as I do tests that failed. And tests that failed, I don't need a huge long explanation, right? I need to see the condition. I need to see why it failed, know that it's real, so that I can get in there and fix it, right? And that's what I care about. And I think over time we've been really focused on delivering big reports and having all this functionality. You don't want the developer to stop to have to go execute a test. Now with DevOps, that can happen organically. I want to know that when I put my application up, things are scanning it. And when they find stuff, there's a ticket that's generated in my pipeline. And even better, if I get some kind of trace back that goes, yeah, like this line of code in this module and function like did something bad. It met an error condition. I want to be able to go and fix that. I think in the past, we've been kind of focused on the process that leads up to a developer getting a ticket to have to fix something, right?
Right. And it's usually at the end of the pipeline. It's usually when the application team sends it over to the security team scans it, then we hand them all the vulnerabilities and issues they need to fix, instead of doing it integrated into the overall process.
Right. And ideally, those become unit tests, right? That's
correct. Yeah.
There's some segments I have planned in my head about unit tests, because it's become a lot more formal and it's really awesome.
So this Threat Connect announcement supporting the MITRE ATT&CK framework, I mean, obviously makes complete sense. Question is this a catch-up thing now? There's been a lot of announcements around this lately.
So it's interesting you say that, Matt. So the trend I'm seeing, and we have an interview on Thursday with Katie, who actually works for MITRE, specifically in the threat intelligence aspect of the attack framework. And oftentimes when we talk about MITRE ATT&CK, we're talking about it in the context of breach and attack simulation, right? I want to emulate these attacks inside my environment and understand where my weaknesses are so I can improve my defenses. What the more recent trend that I'm starting to see, and I'm sure people use this from the get-go, is more on the threat intelligence side of the house. That, when an alert comes in from threat intelligence, it's tied to the attack framework so that we know there's a group out there that's got some malware and it's got a specific signature and is doing a bunch of stuff. But by the way, they're very specifically preying upon this one item in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Now I can integrate that not only into my threat intelligence, but also integrate that into my defenses. And now we've got a common platform for threat intelligence analysts to go, yeah, I'm seeing this. And by the way, it maps back to this MITRE ATT&CK framework piece, and go to the defenders and say, make sure you focus on this piece. Not so important like who the attackers are and like what they're doing. But when you tie it back to this is the technique that they're using right now, anyway, defenders, I think, will have a much better communication between in larger organizations, right? Your threat analyst team and your defenders.
So take your 4 quadrants for a second, right? We saw adoption of this at the endpoint side pretty quickly. Then we saw it move to the SIEMs. This is just that continual evolution down into the threat intelligence vendors.
Exactly. And we'll talk more about it with probably the world's foremost expert on this topic on Thursday, which is awesome. Anything else in the stories that piqued your interest, Matt? Some of my stories were having trouble loading for some reason. I know.
No, there's a I mean, there's
an announcement.
I was
Kind of.
You know, the problem I have with Radware is they do so much stuff. Nobody really understands what they do.
Agreed.
This is just another example of that. They've got a cloud workload protection platform enhancement. They're just so broad based. It's really hard to understand where their true niche is. That's one of the issues I have with them. The Ixia article on network monitoring is so passe because we're moving on. No, nothing else exciting here for me.
I agree. I mean, just the tool sprawl thing is just kind of an outdated concept, in my opinion, fundamentally. So, with that, we will take a short break, come back with some interviews, so stay tuned.